What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the next part of building an Instagram app series. In the last part, we worked on the post view controller where we set up the table view that we see here. And this part, we're going to continue along and start putting together our feed. Make sure you destroy the like button, hit subscribe if you've been following along, and let's continue on. So basically, we are going to copy the table view stuff that we had going on for the post view controller, and we're going to put it in our home view controller and adjust it so we can essentially render a feed. So let's go to our home view controller after copying all of that, and we are going to paste it in. So at the end of the last video, what I went ahead and did is I created a model called home feed render view model, and it basically encapsulates 4 other view models for each section. And each of the home feed models is represented by a total of 4 sections. So we're going to do some math to figure out number of sections and such. So it's going to be a little complicated, but let's get into it and see how we do. So number of sections is going to be the number of our models multiplied by 4, since each model has 4 sections. And number of rows is where things are going to get a little complicated. So what we want to do is first comment this out, and let's do some math. Let me actually align that again. So what we want to first do is get the total number of models, which will say, we actually don't even need the total number of models. So what we're going to say is if section is 0, we're going to do some stuff. So 0 is a special case. Otherwise, what we want to do is figure out the model that we want. So the model that we want, first we need to get the position of the model. So the position of the model is going to be if X, which is section. So let's redefine section up here as X so things are easier to work with. We'll say X. So we're going to say if X modulo 4, and modulo defines basically how many times one number goes into the other. If that equals 0, aka there's no remainder, we're going to return X divided by 4. Otherwise, we are going to return X subtracting X modulo 4, 4, and this whole thing divided by 4. So let's wrap that in parentheses. This will give us basically the position of the model that we want. The reason we need to do that elaborate logic, which really isn't that elaborate if you really kind of think about it, is because for each batch of 4 sections, we want to use the same model. So now what we can say is model is essentially our model collection and the position in here, like so. That gives us our model. And let's see, we can actually take this out of the else because 0 is handled in a special case. The reason 0 is handled in a special case is because we can't divide by 0. That'll actually crash our app. So if the section is 0, we know we want the first model. So we can simply actually copy this line right there. And we can say position is 0. And let's see, what do we want to do now? So let's actually make our lives even better. So let's put model up here, and this is going to be a home feed render view model. And we can actually put this back in the else. Let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of that. And based on the model, the internals of the model, we are going to figure out how many rows to return. So that leads me to the next part of this, which is a little bit of math. We want to basically find out which position in our batch of 4 are we at, right? So each render point is going to have 4 sections: header, post, actions, and comments. So we're going to get that number by saying subsection, which is going to be our X modulo 4, if I'm not mistaken, and that'll always give us either 0, 1, 2, or 3. So we're going to say if subsection is 0, this is our header, And let me get rid of my antivirus pop-up. And let me copy and paste this with some else cases. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to say if the subsection is 1, it's the post, which is the primary content. Next one is actions. And the last one is comments. So cool. So just to recap this math here, basically we first want to figure out which model we want. And the reason we do this little arithmetic here is our models collection actually holds each of these objects, which internally represents 4 sections, which is why number of sections is that counts multiplied by 4. So we do some math to get the model out. Then each of those has a subsection. So we're going to figure out 0, 1, 2, or 3. And based on that, we can return different number of rows. So in the case of a header, it's going to always have 1 row. In the case of a post, it'll have 1. In the case of a action, it'll have 1. In the case of comments, this one's a little different. So in the case of comments, we're going to get the comment model out of the primary model, like that. And what we can now go ahead and do is we're going to switch on the comment model dot render type. And the one we care about is comments in here, which has comments. And for default, you can do rather at unknown, if I can spell it correctly. Default, we're going to do fatal error because this should always be comments if we've come down to this case. We're going to say invalid case. And in the case of comments, we're going to return the count of comments, but similar to what we did in the post. If there's more comments, then let's say, let's do 2 since we're in the feed. We're going to return 2, otherwise we'll return the count of comments. Now, what I also realized we forgot to do in the other video is we never accounted for a cell for the user's caption. So we're going to adjust that in a little bit, but go ahead and hit Command B. And let's see why we have an issue here. So let's see, let comments. We need to add return here. So we can return that count. And it looks like we still have an issue. So switch, it's saying it basically wants to be exhaustive. That's a warning though. So this stuff is looking good actually. So the issue is with these other functions down here. So what we want to go ahead and do down there is similarly get the model. So we can actually copy this business right here. So in cell for row at index, we get the model in the same fashion, except instead of using section, we're going to use index path.section. So that gives us our model. And then once again, we're going to get this subsection bit. And based on whichever case we're in, we are going to dequeue a given cell. So what I am going to do is move up this logic. So in the case of, so comment model will be that. So let's actually just type it out, make our use of some code writing. So let's get rid of this stuff. Let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of that. So what we want to actually do is get the sub models. So header model is going to be model.header, and post model will be model.post, or primary content rather. Forget what I called it. Should pop up. Looks like we called it post. Next one is going to be model, or action model will be model.actions, and the last one will be comment model will be model.comments. And now in each of these, we're going to want a switch. So I'm going to say comment model dot the render type, and we only care about 1 in each of these if conditions. So in this case, we only care about comments in this one. And similarly for the unknown default, we're just going to do fatal error. So for the comments case, go ahead and copy basically what we have right down here, which is dequeuing and returning that cell. We can pop that right in there. And what I'm gonna do is let's ignore these warnings for a second. We'll fix them in a moment. We're gonna go ahead and copy and paste this, and we'll change up the switch every single time. So in this one, we care about the case. So this should be header model. And we care about the header. And this provides a user for us. So we're going to say let user. We're going to want to change that cell in a second, but let's do these first. In the post one, we care about the primary content. And this provides a post model for us, like so. In this case, we want to change this to action model. And again, in this case, we care about the actions, and this provides a string for us. Let's just call it provider. And let's go ahead and move these DQ cell things up here. So for actions, we're going to take this and paste it directly into here. And let's get rid of that switch in case. Get rid of that one as well. For primary content, you're going to grab that, and we're going to throw that into the primary content here. And let's continue along. Grab this last one, which is the header. We can actually delete this stuff now. And let's put that header into the header right over here. And let's see, go ahead and hit Command B. We still have some errors, and that should be down here in the sizing. So similarly, we're going to grab this code that we had up here already, which gets our model and our subsection. And what we're going to do, actually, we don't even care about our model in this case. We just care about the subsection. So we can actually just do that. And let's simplify even more and just do that like so. And what we can actually say is, so actually we don't even want this. So index path also gives us the row position. So we could just say actually, if index path dot row is 0, we're actually going to return the height of the header, which is row 0. Actually, we do want the section. I take it back. Because we're not using rows, we need the section position actually. So we're going to say if subsection equals 0, go ahead and return the height for the header, which looks like said 70. Let me add some else if cases. In the next case, which is 1, which is our post, next case 2, next case 3. For the post, we're going to return the width of the table view, which is our post. For the next one, which is actions, we're going to return this number right here, 60. And finally, for subsection, every single comment is going to be a standard height of this. So go ahead and put that there. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Hit Command B, and looks like this is complaining. In the else case, let's go ahead and return 0. So in this case down here, go ahead and hit Command B. Looks like we still have an error somewhere in here. At the end of the table view cell for row function, go ahead and return a standard UI table view cell. This should never occur. And if it does, we'll catch that here. Hit Command B. Looks like we still have some errors. Let's figure out what those are. Looks like we have quite a few errors actually. So let's come down here. So in the function for number of rows, again, return 0 here. That's the standard. And let's see what other issues we have. Looks like we've got a bunch of warnings, and we're going to fix these right now super quick. So go ahead, and for each of these ones where we're not using the other cases, you just need to put them in here so they're all accounted for. So case header, case actions, and case, I think we called it primary content. And for each of these, you can just return 0 since it should never actually occur. That'll make this warning right here go away. We can actually get rid of this unknown default now. And let's see what else it's complaining. We don't actually need the case there. You can just use the shorthand. So that gets rid of those warnings. So let me go ahead and put these elsewhere where we're doing the switch logic. So in this case, once again, get rid of this. And we want instead of header here, we're gonna want comments now. And let's go ahead and, so in this case, we're gonna actually return a cell instead of a number. So UI table view cell. And let's see, what else do we have going on? I don't think we have any more up here, but we have some more cells to do down here. Let's go ahead and do this one. The one we want to replace is primary content. Replace that to be header. And this one, which is actions, we're going to replace actions to be header. And then in this one, which is comments, we're going to replace this, and we're going to replace comments to be header. Go ahead and hit Command B. Should be compiling with far less errors now. We're still going to have some errors or warnings about we're not using these properties. But go ahead and hit run and make sure your app isn't crashing, because what we're doing in the table view now is a little more elaborate, and we definitely should not be crashing. Okay, we're not crashing, which is a good sign. Let's create some models that can actually go into our feed render models here. So I'm going to create a function that's going to say create mock models. And we're going to call that function InviewDidLoad. And basically, we want to create 4 models and append them in here. We're going to do that a few times. So we're going to say for x in 0 to 5, we'll create up to 5. We'll create 5 posts. We want to create basically 4 models, 4 submodels, and we're going to append them into a home feed render view model. So view model is going to be home feed render view model. And this gets created with 4 things: a header, a post, actions, and comments. And if I'm not mistaken, we already do this in the post view controller. So go ahead and let's find where we mock that stuff out here. So I believe we do it in configure models right here. Yep, so we definitely do it right here. So let's go ahead and so it looks like we have this user post model, which is the notification business that comes in. So let's see where we're mocking that out. I believe we create mocks in the notification view controller. So hop in here, and we're going to copy and paste so we don't have to make this over and over. So we have this user, this post, and let's just copy these 2 and go back to our home view controller. And we're going to paste them right above the for loop here. Control I to fix this, and let's create each of these. So a post render view model. So post render view model, and this gets created with a render type, and the render type in this case is a header, and the provider is a user, so we can simply pass in the user that we have up above. And I'm going to be lazy and copy and paste this. And these are going to change this time. So we actually forgot one parenthesis, so make sure you bring that in. And in this case, we want this to be a primary content. And this takes in a user post, which we have up here as well. It's called post. So we're going to pass that in. The next one is an action. So we're going to pass in actions. And this just takes a string, which is a placeholder for now. And the last one takes in comments and a collection of comments, which we'll say is post comments. So let's see, we're going to create comments up above. So comments, let's go ahead and create comments here, which will be a collection of post comments. Whoops. And we're going to say for x in 0 to, I don't know, up until 2, we're going to create a comment and append it in here. And a comment is going to have an ID. We'll just throw x in here for the time being. username, which we'll say is, I don't know, Jenny. Text will be, this is the best post I've seen. Let's see, created date, we'll say now. Likes will be an empty collection. Let me line break all this stuff so it looks a little nicer. Let's line break that right there as well. And let's see, looks like we have an error here. Let's see why this is complaining. This is complaining use of unresolved identifier ... to that. So we need to get rid of one of these dots and that'll go away. And let's see, comments.append, we're appending a post comment. Cannot use mutating member because this is a let, and we should make this a var. Go ahead and hit Command B now, and your app should be compiling. So we're going to run it and make sure it works, and then we're going to review all the stuff we just did because the model logic for this stuff is a little complicated, and I want to review it once with everybody. So cool. So we have our feed now. Here's our first post. Here's our second post. So the blue is actually where each of the posts begins. And we don't actually set up the cells right now. So this is where like the header goes, the post, the action buttons, the 2 comments, and here's where the next post starts. So what we want to do is actually set some spacing between these sections. So what we want to either do is set section insets, or we want to create an empty section footer. So let's see, there's a function for the table view, and I believe it is called height for section footer or height for header. And I think what we'll do is we'll go with the one with the footer. So we're going to say height for footer, and we want this one. Let's say the height for each footer is going to be roughly 70. So there's some buffer room between each post. And I think we need to return. So right now we don't actually have any spacing. And the reason is we need to return view for footer. And the one we want is this one right here. And for now, just go ahead and return a empty UI view. Go ahead and hit Command R to run. And now you should see there's some spacing. Right now, the spacing is between every single section, which is not what we want. So what we want to actually do is only return it if it is a every 4th section, basically. So we're going to say if the render models, what do we call it, models or view models? Let's see what we call that collection that we were using up here. I think we called it feed render models. So if feed render models modulo 4 equals 0, aka 4 can go into it an even number of times, we'll return 70 for the height. Otherwise, we're going to return 0. And let's see why this is complaining. This should be feed render models.count. So the modulo is pretty interesting and it's pretty helpful. So now you can see there's actually some space here between the model and the background color. So let's see. Actually, it looks like we don't actually see it here. So let's see what's going on. So this should be actually a modulo section, because if we use 4, it's going to always be an even number. Let's try that one more time. Looks like we're crashing here now. So let's see what's going on. So feed render models count section equals 0. It's saying basically division by 0 is not allowed. So we're going to say if section is 0, you can go ahead and return 0. Else, if we're going to try to do the modulo, and we're going to see what we got going on. All right, now looks like we have the spacing under each of the posts, which is actually not in fact what we would like. So let's see what we've got going on. So to get the subsection, we're basically doing this. We're taking the section and doing modulo 4. So I'm going to actually bring that here. And what we can say is if the subsection is 3, should be the last section for each of the posts, return 70, otherwise return 0. And this should simply be section here. Let's take a look at that. All right, beautiful. So what we're saying is because the subsection is 0, 1, 2, 3, if the subsection is 3, aka the comments, after that, add a buffer room of 70 pixels. Otherwise, the buffer room between each section is 0. So you might be wondering why we're using sections and overcomplicating our lives here. And the reason is because the sections give us more control over the internal rows. So for example, for comments, we might want the section to show 2 comments or 4 comments. We also want to show variable sized content in different cases. So let's say we want another row here if the user tags a location. So Instagram actually has their own version of table views called IG List Kit, which gets a little, I think, too complicated for this series, which is why we set it up ourselves. But let's go ahead and review how we are doing this model calculation business, and then we'll wrap it up there. So cool. So basically, we are creating a bunch of models in here in our setup mock. And once again, a feed model is represented by 4 submodels. And each of these 4 submodels will have their own section. In the comments case, the comments model will also have how many comments we are going to show. So in number of sections, it's pretty easy. We have a collection of those home models, home feed models. We say that times 4 because each one has 4 sections. Number of rows is pretty easy too. We basically get the model out of the collection. And if it's 0, because 0 is a special case and you can't divide by 0, we just get the first one. Otherwise, we say how many times does 4 go into X, which is the section. If there is no remainder, which is what modulo does, which is the little percent sign, then we say take X, which is the section number, and divide it by 4, and that's the model position we're at. Otherwise, we do a little bit of more math and we say, okay, get the remainder of X divided by 4 and subtract that from X and divide that by 4. And that gives us the position of our model. Next up, we get the subsection because every single model is going to have 4 sections, which is 0, 1, 2, 3 over and over. And we say if it's the header case, we only want 1 row because in the header we have 1 row. Same for the post, same for the actions, but the one where we want different number of rows is the comments. So for the comments case, we say if there's more than 2 comments, go ahead and max it up to 2. We're going to show the 2 most recent comments. Otherwise, go ahead and show comments.count, which will just be basically 1 comment. And we have this return 0. If all of this fails, all else fails, go ahead and return 0. Similarly, for cell for row, we first get the model and subsection. And in our case, subsection is driving, the subsection render type is going to be driving the actual type of cell we use. So based on the subsection, we get from our model.header, and then off of the header model, we get the render type. So we can actually simplify this even more and just go ahead and do that and get rid of that. And based on that, we return a cell. Now we know if we're looking at the header here, we shouldn't ever get these types of render cells, which is why we're just returning a basic UI table view cell. It should never get called. And the same logic applies to basically every other type of cell here. So I'm just going to simplify this a little bit. And I will say that this is one of the more complicated table view kind of setups that I have done, especially one of the series or videos. So if you have any questions, absolutely leave them down below. The last thing we did here was the subsection, and based on that, we're returning the height for each row inside of it. So I'll add comments. So this is the header. This is the post. This is the actions. So like and comment. And this is the comment row. So now notice this is not representing the height of the entire section for a comment, but every row within it. And then finally, we return a basic UI view for our divider. It's going to be empty, no subviews, and then we're basically returning a height for the footer. And that's going to be 70 if we are dealing with the last section, hence giving us this divider. So this video got pretty long with the models. I wanted to get through it faster, but I think it's important that you guys understand all of it. So that said, if you haven't destroyed the like button, make sure to do so. Comment if you have any questions. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching. I will catch you in the next part.